I spoke to a senior manager there. He said, in their opinion, it's the biggest single change in 30 years.
Welcome to Advice Amplified. Today's guest is Charles Walker.
For some people in a downturn market, like some of my associates, the IFA is still getting their percentage, and it kind of like leaves a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth for some people.
In this episode, we talk about the evolving landscape and changing expectations from both firms and candidates for working conditions and culture.
Because at some stage, if you're valued, they will counter-offer. Now, we've seen counter-offers go from what was 10% pre-COVID now up to 20%.
He has over 30 years experience in the financial services industry. 20 of those have been spent running his own firm, a boutique search and recruitment agency.
And life's all about how you make people feel. And if you make someone feel bad in another life, they'll come back and bite you on the arse in this life.
Yeah, that's
awesome. Too brutal language.
I enjoyed this conversation so much and really hope you will too. If you did, please share it with someone who you think might like it too. Thank you. Hey, Charles, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me, guys. Really appreciate being down here.
Got stacks I want to ask you. Really excited to kind of hear your thoughts on other things. So it feels like there's some really critical things that every candidate's going to be looking for, like working remotely is super important. I wondered if you had any top tips for, for firms looking to hire some people, how do they attract people, but then also make sure they filter out the kind of bad from the good and they get good hires that are going to stick and those kind of things.
Still to the day, one of the biggest considerations that people should have is that our clients typically don't like to see more than 5 jobs in 3 years. So it still holds tight to today because it's hard to hit a moving target. It's kind of like the line, if someone joins your business for 1 year and then they've got this history of changing jobs every year, there's an indication without the company going down the pan, it's effectively saying that there's been a hard time and that individual's just buckled. So I say to all of my team is that it's critical we understand the reason why they've moved as an individual, because our clients typically don't like to see that as a trend. Let me give you a case. I'll give you an example. We had a young lad at Oakham, really talented kid at Oakham. And his dad phoned me up and said, Charles, can you get him into a legal firm in Peterborough? Bright as a button, got first. Ticks every box. He really does. I agreed to meet the guy in the Bull Hotel in Peterborough. And I said to him, I'll meet you there at 2:00. I'm going to be in there. You'll notice me. I'll give him my description and I'd like you just to come and find me. The director of the legal firm in Peterborough, the CEO of it, he likes people who are commercial, not just academic, but who are commercial, who can think outside the box. I walked into the Bull Hotel at 2:00, 5 to 2. I saw the young lad sitting there. He's 22, 23, so it's not really a young lad. He's gone through the whole process. It took him 15 minutes to come and find me. I rang up the CEO and I said, I'm not going to put him forward to you, because he couldn't navigate being on time with me for 15 minutes, as academically as bright as he are. The CEO told me beforehand, I want you to personally interview him, Charles, because I've got his CV. I can't see anything extracurricular that he's done. I can't see a paper round. I can't see a charity. I can't see anything that he's done over and above. I can't see him hosting 2 jobs, let alone any jobs. It looks like his parents have done well and they put him through an education process and he's done well at that.
And how do you see that change as you get into maybe the more senior, like paraplanning roles, and then even once you get up to some of those employed advisor roles?
They've got to become a relationship of meaning, of substance, because if not, it's just a paraplan. I get a paraplanner CV, they've got chartered on it, and we've got to get away from this spray and pray nonsense that the industry does. We'll chuck it into these 20 people here. We've got to say to people, tell us about what you're looking for. Active listening is singularly the most important aspect of being a recruiter. We've got to ask you some really good open questions, and we've got to take your answers, and we've got to find an environment and culture which you will thrive in. If you've got 3 or 4 really good referrals, because the world lives off LinkedIn. So all of a sudden now, if you're on LinkedIn, someone will ring up and say, what's Alpha like? Or Facebook or TikTok, whichever media it is, and they'll get a reference of you before you join their business, be it formal or informal. The informal one can make or break you, because we've had some exceptional candidates who on paper look unbelievable, and the clients will get back to you with something. When can you get back to us? This guy's got every single thing you want. His diploma, his chartered, his, congressional medal. And he comes back and says, not for us. And the only way he gets that, or she gets that not for us, is they've asked 2 or 3 of their peers. They said, not for us, not the sort of person we want in our business. So kind of like, it's really important you manage your current career. So if someone dislikes you immensely and you rub something up the wrong way in your current company, that may well come back and bite you on the arse in your next company.
And I mean, that resonates so hard because I think, from an employer's perspective, it's scary, like hiring someone, because you spend a couple of hours with them, you see the CV, but there's all this kind of nebulous fog around what they're actually going to turn into. And getting a one-line message on LinkedIn from somebody who's worked with them saying they're legit, I'd love to work with them again. I'm like, it just goes on like confidence and happiness.
And conversely, if you get that one-liner saying absolute talented, but they're disruptive, and you trust that person who's told you that, then there's a likelihood of you taking that person is limited. Yeah, which that's kind of like you got to manage your CV, you got to manage where you are really well these days, because it's so interconnected, where you are and what you've been and what you've done, and life's all about how you make people feel. And if you make someone feel bad in another life, they'll come back and bite you on the arse in this life.
100%.
Yeah, that's
awesome.
Too brutal language.
We're a pretty weird business in lots of ways, and we're looking for weird people, or unique people, I should say, rather than weird. And
I was going to say unique's better than weird.
But high demands, and often we go in there without really that much of a clue of exactly what we want. And I feel like with us at least, you really almost coached us and guided us through firming up exactly what we need. And I suppose, is that common? And do you do the same on the reverse with the candidate, help them? Or is it like a bit of career and life coaching along the way?
Very much so. I think with our style, and we've been done, and so there'll be agencies out there who will invoice a lot more than us, because we will not do the spray and pray. We will not take your CV and send it anywhere without your prior consent. We'll do the piece about culture and environment. We'll tell you the reasons why people have left that business. We'll do it everything, because ultimately we want you to go somewhere and be successful. So it's difficult to sort of like guide people. So we say to them now, in the old days, we used to say to them, why do you want to leave your job? Now we say, cite 3 reasons. Give us 3. And it's always down to environment, culture. In the old days, it's always been people left their manager, because the manager, but now it's kind of like the marketplace has changed significantly. So it's a difficult and changing landscape that we've seen. I say the consolidators have made life better for us, because they're now given employed roles. That's the biggest shift. That used to be always self-employed, other than the high-end private clients end and private banks. But now it's very much, fortunately, we're getting roles for financial planners. And I make the distinction between advisors and planners, because they make the distinction, and on good salaries. And it's growing. That part of the market is growing through our experience over the past 6 months.
Not necessarily all financial planners, but there's that kind of entrepreneurial vibe to it, which kind of goes against a salary. But I suppose that bottom end of, I've got my mortgage covered, I've got my bills covered, is super important. I
think with companies like, can I mention companies?
Yeah, and if you, don't want to cut them after,
companies like, we got to bow down to aspects of St. James's Place, because their academy over the past 10 years has taken 1,000 people through it. They would argue it still retains 80%. I'm not sure that number's correct, but as a result of that, we've got really good young, and that's the emphasis. If we've got the average age 57, 58, we need people in the 30s. And the St. James's Place and diverse inclusivity aspect, they've driven that through. So we now have a more compelling proposition for people my age and younger, more importantly. So it's interesting the way the market's sort of ebbing and flowing. But I did not, Next Wealth was talking about, I think it's going to grow by 2032 by 16% or 10%.
Yeah, which is huge, isn't it? And I mean, it's interesting you mentioned the SJP Academy. Like, have you seen any good recruitment strategies, or, because that's one model, isn't it? Grab graduates, grab people that are interested and push them through a process.
I think SJP, what they've done is they've done better than the norm. The norm, as companies like, Westminster would go and get the graduates, and there's always graduate. What St. James's Place have done, they've focused more on people's relationship skills. So they've taken because ultimately, as a financial planner, people buy or take advice from people they know, trust and like. That's never changing. So as long as you've got an academic ability, I think at A levels or college level, but you've got something deeper about having a desire to help people, desire to build a relationship with people, I think that carries more weight than anything at the moment.
Journey, I suppose. So when I was 23, I'd done every exam you can imagine, and was like super technical in the paraplanning space, all that kind of stuff. And I remember applying for jobs as a financial advisor and just rocking up and saying, well, look at all these exams I've got. I can answer any technical question you can imagine. Zero relationship skills whatsoever. And I was told that by the kind of recruiting manager, and I had no idea how to build up a business or get in front of people. I suppose my reflection on that is kind of interesting, because when we talk to younger people that maybe have opportunities in this industry or would be interested in it, they're put off by the technical side of it. Even if they've got great relationships, they're like, oh, it's really difficult. It's all these exams, blah, blah, blah,
I think what we're seeing now, and there's a lot of companies like the private office in Leeds, they're spreading their wings out, and Insight in Norwich, they're taking you through what I see as an apprenticeship now. So their recruitment activity is about getting 21, 22-year-old graduates or A-level study into a senior administrator, paraplanner, advisor. It is like a structured career path. That's becoming more of the norm. So we're finding that, so our appetite to hire administrators, in the past, it used to be an administrator back 2015 when RDR had come through. It was just a generic administrator. It could have been anyone. But now the administrators are going through academia. They're going through the diploma, and they're structuring it really early, which is really good, because that's the next level of advisors or planners coming through. Is all in-house. It's really good.
Yeah. And I suppose they've got that technical backing. They already know the process. They know the detail.
Yeah. The argument is, and I think the challenge is, at what stage when Mr. 58-year-old IFA retires, who has his clients? That's the bit. And I don't know whether technology can help with that gap, but that's kind of like, hopefully you can give me a bit of a steer on that.
Yeah, kind of. And I think, we were chatting earlier about the responsibility of an advisor being more than just servicing their kind of core clients, where their money's coming from. They've got a responsibility to their wider clients, the children, the relations of that. And I think, my hypothesis is that technology can help the firm as a whole, but also some of those more junior advisors build those relationships, give some of that guidance, and build an understanding of whether it's debt or whatever else. So there's more of a pipeline of business there, I guess.
I kind of guess then who owns the client becomes a really big question, because, if I'm a company, I want to, as much as possible, I want to corporatize the relationship, as opposed to it just being owned by me, Mr. IFA, because at some stage we need to get value out of that long term, because the IFA is going to go, he's going to. So the interesting bit for me is, what's the ambition of the consolidators? Is it about getting money put in on the platform, or is it about getting to their capital event in 5 years' time? I'm not sure. I can't see. I'm not closely enough linked to understand their motivations.
I suppose with everything, you follow the money, don't you? So if the money is assets under management, then everything's going to be driven by that. Whereas increasingly, we're seeing kind of models for monthly subscriptions for financial planning, and you think, well, that's the firm generating revenue for delivering a service, and it kind of breaks that link, I guess.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I'd like a conversation with my RFA about subscription. Personally, I would, because when you look at your market and you see the market's gone up, it's gone down. I think for some people in a downturn market, like some of my associates, the IFA is still getting their percentage, and it kind of like leaves a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth for some people. But I think it showed in the report that that's increasing.
Yeah.
Which is good. How do you see the challenges in terms of the growth of the market? There's clearly sufficient clients, because there's the baby boomers, like I've alluded to, have got wealth, and that wealth is going to be handed down. Do you see the market growing?
Yeah, definitely. There's so many firms we're talking to now that, there's obviously the consolidation model, isn't it? Build it to a point, sell it, done.
Yes.
Increasingly, at least the firms we're getting in front of, they're not really that excited about that. They love their clients, they love their business, and they want to grow it and bring people in to look after that. But it's that idea of having a junior advisor working alongside you, can maybe work as a paraplanner, help you deal with your clients, and eventually run your business. And, the increasing, I forget the name for it now, it's going to be really annoying, but the almost like employee ownership structures, where the principal is going to sell the business, and it might mean they don't get a big lump sum all in day one, but the business runs and has a legacy. The biggest constraint we're being told about growth in a business is admin and paraplanning. By virtue of that, I suppose the time taken to do annual reviews or onboard a client, if it takes an advisor X amount of time, they can only look after 80 clients. And you either hire paraplanners into that space to take some of that burden off, or you fix the process.
If I look at the 5 so far this year, we've had 5 January, we've had 5 starters, all in the wealth space, call it. 1 paraplanner and a good salary paraplanner, really good salary, sort of like starts with a 6. So really good paraplanner, chartered paraplanner, so really done well. 2 planners, 1 administrator and 1 senior administrator. That will give you sort of like a feel for it. Next month, it's similar. So we're finding more appetite for employed financial planners than we've done for 5 years. Yeah, and it's with either professional firms linked to accountancy or legal firms, or it's with organizations who are consolidators who bought a book and now they split that book in terms of the clients into 300 clients, 150, bring in Mr. IFA as a glorified account manager effectively, with an expectation of 80% servicing, 20% growing.
Nice. Yeah.
Through their network, through referrals. And I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was all about, as I alluded to earlier, novating. How much AUM you got? What can you bring across?
Yeah.
And it's a really crude conversation. It was always about the client, but it's never about the client in terms of, can you bring across, what have you got? 10 million, 15 million, 20 million to bring across? And then we'll give you a 3 times validation and et cetera, et cetera. So it feels like it's changing for the better for me.
Yeah.
As a recruiter.
That's insane. So, I mean, going back to that 2010s, having a client book to go to, that's the dream. You land on your feet. There's no what you're bringing with you, how you're going to generate new business. Does that change what recruiters are looking for? So in terms of qualifications or skill set, it's less about hunting new business or what you've got already.
Yeah, very, very much so. We had a case recently, I won't mention the names of the companies or the individual, but he had 200 and, what did he have? No, he had 2.5 million AUMs. So he went to see a client. The client had done their analysis on it, and he's happy to bring across his own clients. They were generally his own clients. There's no restrictive covenants. He could literally sign up and they could come across. The client had done some crude evaluation. About over 3 years, they wouldn't make sufficient money to bring him across. So I think there are some clients which are truthfully about where's the line of profit, but there are ones, and the ones that we're choosing to deal with, they are the ones who are going employed. They have a legacy book of clients for the individual to work with. And it's becoming more about the organization in terms of, is it a good company? What's the culture like? What's the environment like? Like a proper joined up business like yours or mine. We care about the people that work with us, and it's got to be collaborative and open communication. And we're finding more of that now with the organizations that have bought a business with a book. They're trying to retention of staff is so important these days. Game's changed. I hope it continues to change, to be honest with you, because it gives us, it was 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. It was, whether it would have been whoever, it was about AUMs. What can they novate across? What can they bring across? And then they get into the rate card. You get into 60-40, 70-30. You've got some networks now who are doing 90-10s, and the headline news is fantastic. But what sits behind that 10? Yeah. And I think there's a greater attitude with the younger people to go for an employed role. I don't know what the rationale is for that other than I think there's a collegiate feel. They like to be part of a business. And I think COVID's taught us that being on your own in isolation. And I was coming down on the train just now. I was reading some, kind of fascinated by it. This question for you. What's the loneliest group of people in this country? If you had to go through your Generation Z, your baby boomers, your millennium, which cohort would you say are officially the loneliest group?
The last time I looked into this, it was sort of middle-aged men that had the lowest number of friends and those kind of things.
Changed to 16 to 24.
No way.
16 to 24-year-olds now are the loneliest group.
Which is wild, isn't it?
And that is frightening. That is really frightening at every level when we think around about wealth, when we think about just basic living and mental well-being, you've got this cohort of people who are coming up who are miserable.
Yeah.
And, there's lots to be done on that. And, I think it all links into me to financial planning, because there's going to be all this wealth given to these kids who are 16 to 24, and they just won't know what to do with it. They really do need a guide. So there's got to be some way of passing that down the line. I don't know how it's done. Hopefully your product can help with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it has to, right? It's kind of...
Oh, it has to.
Because like you say, you don't have to be insanely wealthy these days. If you've done all right in terms of pension savings, you've got a half-decent house and paid that down, you're going to be looking at IHT, you're going to be looking at some sizable kind of checks passing around.
But if you're sensible and you only have 1 or 2 kids, not like me and going for 4, and you sort of like, you sit there and you're going to end up, if I can avoid nursing homes, I'm going to end up with a few quid. And my 4 kids will be, they'll do all right out of me. And they've got no, they know what every posh car is. They know they know where every holiday they want to go, but they've got no understanding. I know it's my responsibility at the base level, but they've got no understanding of what to do with money. And I think that's their generation.
Yeah.
And I think we just need to work out how we support that, because that's a problem coming, because the wealth transfer is happening.
Yeah. Underway, isn't it, I guess?
And I think when I look at the industry, I sit down, I think it's in a better place. I think consumer duty is great. It's building on the back of RDR. It's making people more accountable for what they do. I think it's positive. Yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah. And I suppose on consumer duty, have you seen any big reactions to it, or dramatic changes in approach or strategy or stress out there?
SJP straight away, haven't they? SJP have done the exit charges. They've had a look at it. I spoke to a senior manager there. He said, in their opinion, it's the biggest single change in 30 years.
Wow.
When we had the RDR, that was huge at the time. That felt like huge. And, the world went restricted, didn't it? When it went IFA, and you had this sort of like, and now everyone's gone IFA, and the restricted models got less and less and less. Change is great. Change is great. As a recruiter, we want growth or change.
Yeah.
Because that gives you movement. It always gives you movement. And now we've got both.
Yeah.
So it's a great time to be a recruiter in the wealth market.
And I found it really interesting that you asked kind of 3 questions about why people are leaving their current role. And then also we were talking slightly there around making the kind of target firm as exciting as possible for people, the reasons they want to join.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, I guess you want to solve the things that are forcing someone to leave when you're figuring out how to build a great business. So it'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on that. I
think the first part is, let me just give a little bit more detail on the reasons why we asked 3 reasons outside of money, because the counter offer is the standard now. So what will happen is you're on 50K and I'll say to you, tell me the reasons why you're considering leaving your organization. You'll talk to me around about culture, environment, a manager, travel to work's too far, and things that aren't movable normally, because we need to repeat that and play it back throughout the whole recruitment process. Because at some stage, if you're valued by your company, and I mean valued as in you're good at what you do, they will counter offer. Now we've seen counter offers go from what was 10% pre-COVID now up to 20%. So you're getting yourself a pay rise just by going through a process and staying where you are. That's something we've seen. So we always play that card. The second bit, Arthur, you're going to have to stop that because I forget what it was. What was the second bit? What was the second bit? I was going to ask you a question.
Like, why do you ask those 3 questions?
Yeah.
And then what are you kind of hearing from people, and what do companies need to do to...
Yeah, so what we hear from people at the moment, and it's universal and it's across the piece, the standard question is work-life balance, 3 and 2, 4 and 1, can I work from home? That's true. We're finding it less from the millennials. We find it really, you're 35, 40, it's becoming an expectation. So some of the vacancies we filled this month, every one of them is a hybrid. Every one of them is a hybrid. And one's gone from a 3 and 2 and switched it to be a 3 and 2 in his favor. So I think companies have to be open-minded now to what the employee wants. They've also got to be open-minded, open communication. They've got to be collaborative. They've got to have employee engagement benefits. They've got to make the employee feel valued and part of that business. It's like a tidal wave. It wasn't there before COVID. It just simply wasn't there. People had a contract that was 5 days a week. I had friends going from Felby to London to work without even a thought on 400-500 quid a day, about even I'm happy to do that journey, that 2.5 hour journey both ways. But now they're saying, no, I only want to work 1 day a week from the office, and I'll do 4 days from home. And the companies are doing that. So I think that's the biggest change we've noticed in all industries and all sectors.
So it's almost like the main negotiation, like salary, but also work from home, plus all the other bits that.
Yeah, I would say work from home is on the same par.
Really?
I think if you can get the salary at the right level, then I think the work from home is really important to a number of people, the majority of people. We've got 2 IFAs starting in Doncaster, and that's the first question they ask, because it helps us as a recruiter, because all of a sudden now, in the past, it would have been Doncaster and an area of 10 miles, 20 miles. Now they can be an hour away because they've got to go to the office once every 2 weeks. Yeah. So it has some real value to us as recruiters, because we stretch your territory out, which means the talent pool is bigger.
Because we're kind of, I mean, when I look at having an office, so we're kind of proper hybrid where all of our engineering team are 100% remote, but most of the rest of the team are kind of in the office.
You got people in different countries, but
yeah, that's true. Yeah. And it works really well.
Yeah.
But then like physically getting around a whiteboard or those kind of water cooler, we don't have a water cooler, do you know what I mean? But just like in the office after a call, having a chat at work, so valuable. But then having an office, forcing people to come to it, it doesn't. So I'm genuinely stuck on the right way to do it, because part of me thinks I should go fully remote if that's the dream. But then you lose so much, and for Ningi at least, it's a genuine belief that having people in the office fairly regularly, once a week, you kind of got to get a coffee, have a chat. You're not going to do any work, are you? It's that osmosis. But I don't want to be too old school about it. But
I think financial services is old school.
Yeah.
I do think they're old school, and I think they're slowly changing. But most of our established clients, I use the word established clients, it's 5 days in the office still.
Yeah.
And it's the way it will be for the paraplanners, for the administrators. It's been that way. I'm sure it will change, because if they want to replace talent, then the talent will want to work predominantly. We've got some clients like Exeter Building Society. You can be in Scotland. You have to go to the office once a month. It's a great contract. So for us, we can look anywhere in the country for it. But I think if you're looking to hire talent now, you've got to make sure that your organisation culturally is a really good fit. Yeah, that you've got open communication. You're fully aware of diversity, inclusivity. It's really important. You've got to, because in the old days, everyone goes on the glass door. So you get to the company's glass door and you see people slaughtering that company. They just thought, oh, I've left here because of Joe Blogs and all that. And it kills you. It kills you in the employment space at the moment.
So I think one final question before we kind of wrap things up. It'd be really interesting to hear your thoughts on where the industry is heading, whether that's the financial advice industry or like recruitment as it related to it.
I think the financial industry is, in my humble opinion, because of the intergenerational wealth transfer with trillions and trillions, I think it's in a really good place. I think the challenge for it is, how do you get the baby boomers and go down to Generation Z and millennials? How do you get that bedded down from a financial planning perspective? How do you get that sort of like the baton being transferred? And I think there's a bit of work to be done on that, because like I've mentioned, my kids have knowledge of my financial planner, but they haven't got a relationship. And it's that relationship bit. So I think there's a big bit to play for in that arena there. But we've got sufficient wealth, trillions of it coming down the line. So I think it's in a good place from a supply and demand. There's going to be enough activity around that. How they capture that, I don't know. From a recruitment perspective, I think 10 years ago, the numbers were, I think there was the best part of 4,000 recruitment agencies. I think it's dropped now to changed that, 44,000. It's dropped to 30,000. So we're seeing the growth of the internal talent attraction teams. So for medium-sized and large enterprises, that will just continue. They'll get an internal. technology, and this is something I haven't really touched on much in terms of AI is going to transform everything. And I think I spoke to Arthur before briefly. I think from the paraplanner's perspective and from the administrator's perspective, there's aspects of that which are going to be automated, which would mean that they'll still need someone to check accuracy, but it can just do so much so quick. And we use that within our market now, and we just top and tail it to make sure it's relevant and appropriate. My fear for the recruitment world is that unless you can get yourself some genuine partners that you understand and you trust, I think it's going to be a tough market for agencies that don't do that. So that's what we try to do really well.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much. I really enjoyed the chat and really appreciate you coming on.
More than welcome.
Awesome
Thank you,
stuff.
Arthur. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, appreciate that. Lovely.
Done.
Get out of lawless London.
Yeah, you survived.